Over the last month, I've had a lot of different meetings with different Washington State employee families, and I've noticed a common trend. So in today's video, we're going to go over the top DIY financial planning mistakes that I came across in just the last 30 days. Now, these are the top mistakes that I've seen being made over and over again through multiple households. So in no particular order, we're going to go through the top 6 that I've came across over the past month, with the whole purpose of this video being to highlight these errors just so you can be aware of what they are. So if you are trying to do this on your own, you can hopefully get some advanced knowledge here and avoid these mistakes. Now, when I say mistakes, this doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad, but it's something that needs to have a lot more thought behind it. In some cases, these things that we're going to cover today could be bad, or they could actually be good in your situation, but it's all really dependent. And these people I've talked to kind of just made a decision without ever doing a lot of deep dive thoughts of, what the consequences are, or if this was the best action for them. Remember, when you're planning retirement for yourself, this is the first time you're probably doing it. There's going to be errors along the way. When you have advisors do it, we've done this hundreds, if not thousands of times. We know the proper steps and mistakes to avoid, so you can at least have a better chance of getting through to your goals with a lot less, headaches and errors. Area number 1 that I've seen a lot of people mess up on was when it comes to choosing the survivorship option with your state pension plan. Many people I see do one of two things. They either pick option 1, I'm going to get the entire pension myself, my spouse gets nothing, or they take the middle of the road option, which is like the 2/3 option. And they don't do a lot of math. Let's say, is that good or not? They just kind of pick one. I like the middle road option, or my spouse gets nothing, give me everything here. So remember, once you pick a survivorship option, it's locked in for life. So this is a really important decision that you want to think about before just checking a box. I've had more often than not lately, people just checking option 1, not giving their spouse anything. And they all have different reasons for it, whether it be an age gap or an income gap or something like that. And honestly, most of the times I think they're probably better off actually taking some type of survivorship benefit because they're not thinking long term. So the most recent case, we had a couple come in and they said that he was going to take option 1. Option 1 was about $10,000 per month. Plan 2 member, 30 plus years, big pension. $10,000 per month. He wanted option 1, which means the spouse gets nothing. Between his Social Security, it was being another $5,000. She was going to get about another $1,000 Social Security. So basically, this household is going to get about $16,000 per month when they're both retired. But if something happens to him, the $10,000 a month pension is now gone. Her $1,000 Social Security check goes away. She only gets to live off of the one Social Security check. So they go from making $16,000 per month down to just $5,000 per month. And he was about 8 years older than she was. So in this case, that's a little bit risky. Now, they had other assets, so maybe there's a case for it. So I'm not saying it's the right or wrong decision, but it's something that kind of, made me think hard about that. Like, that's kind of a hasty decision without doing some deeper planning on it. So remember that if you choose option 1, your spouse gets nothing for it. And then when you choose one of those other options, they're either going to get all of your pension, half, or 2/3 of that pension amount. A lot of people choose the middle road option, the 66%, but not doing the math of what my spouse actually get. So if your pension gets reduced to $9,000 per month, for example, because you chose the 2/3 option, something happens to you, your spouse gets 2/3 of that $9,000. They only get $6,000 per month. Now, if that's enough to help cover their bills, great. But if you're needing all that $9,000, to help cover them, now they're $3,000 a month short. That's going to be a hard thing to make up unless you have a significant amount of savings in the bank or you're significantly reducing your expenses. Now, it's true as you get an older retirement, you travel less, expenses typically go down. But remember, we still have inflation, healthcare, long-term care can completely change that at any point in time. So the last thing you probably want to leave your spouse with is less income, because when you pass away, they're also going to change tax brackets. You go from married filing jointly, the best tax rate that we have, down to single filing, which is the least favorable tax rates. So it's called the widow's tax trap, and they may end up paying more taxes even with slightly less or even the same income. So they'll net less income than they would have otherwise. So it's something to take into account before just checking a box on your survivorship option. A common reason why people I've seen take option 1 is they don't like the deduction. They don't want to take less money now for various reasons, which makes sense. However, it's important to do the math on both ends of the spectrum here. So going back to this example, if they're going to get about $10,000 per month option 1, and let's say the 100% option was about $1,300 a month less, $8,700 per month. And he's like, hey, I don't want to take $1,300 a month less because that's, it's a good amount. $1,300 a month, you're looking at about $15,000 per year that you're losing. Over the course of 20 years, that's $312,000 that you would have not gotten from the system because you chose the survivorship option. So you basically lost $300,000 over the course of 20 years. However, remember that nothing is actually truly lost until it's all said and done. Now, if this person were to pass away 20 years and their spouse is still living, remember, option one, they get nothing. They have to figure out how to make up for this $10,000 deficit that they now got. With the other option, if they got the $87 per month, the 100% option, at $8,700 per month, you would have got $104,000 per year. The spouse would have got another $104,000 per year. And again, this is without adjusting for inflation this whole time, but over just 3 years, that's $313,000. You would have made back, or the spouse would have essentially made back the deficit. The money you gave up over the 20 years would have been made back in just 3 short years, which means every year past that is essentially profit if you want to look at it from that standpoint. So it's important not to just look at it as a deduction, like a permanent loss. The whole point of it is to provide for your spouse and you're no longer here. And if you pass away early and your spouse lives significantly longer than you got a younger spouse, a healthier spouse, things like that, the survivorship options can really be a significant income for them, and you can essentially get more income from the Washington State system overall, and that loss is essentially wiped out within a few short years. Now that leads me to topic number 2, which is somehow expecting your spouse to become a CFO overnight. So when talking to a lot of people that do their own financial planning, there's usually one spouse in particular that typically handles the funds. Most people know a little bit about it, but there's usually one person that is in charge of doing the budgets, the tracking, doing the investing, the trading, things like that, because they want to do it on their own. And they have a pretty good idea of at least where the money is, kind of how it's invested. They have some grand strategy here. They probably watch videos like this one, a podcast, so they have some financial wherewithal on it. Your spouse might not share that same aspiration to manage the money. I know with my wife, she doesn't want to do that at all. When I met her back in college, she already had a financial advisor. So she knew the benefit of the advisor. She didn't want to deal with any of the hassle of figuring out taxes, stock trading, accounts, any of that crap. She had no interest in that at all. And I feel like most spouses, especially as you get older, that's like the last thing I talk about or try to learn. Because you imagine inheriting or your spouse getting what's left of your money, say it's a couple $1,000,000, and now they're expected to figure out where the accounts are, how to log in, how to place trades, how not to mess up on the tax standpoint, when to move things, what errors not to make. And they're going to be doing this in their late 70s, 80s. That's a lot to ask of them. And they're more likely going to make some type of error, misjudgment, act on emotional stuff, just get frustrated, not deal with it at all, and just kind of hope it all works out. So we've seen this happen a lot. So just because you like doing any things on your own doesn't mean your spouse wants to do that at all. So it's important to have these type of contingencies plans in place, knowing that, hey, when we get to a certain point in life, I'm going to start asking help because I want somebody to come in there to help manage the funds or at least know the situation so they can help guide them when I'm no longer around or able to do the trades. I come from a family of DIY people. They all like doing things themselves. My grandpa's a great example. He always did his own stocks. He talks about all the mining stocks, gold stocks that he has. But now he's in his 90s. He doesn't really care for doing the stock trading. He checks the accounts when he can. But with all the health issues he's had, he's not able to get to his computer as much. And it's just tough. You can't really manage the funds. You can't sell anything because you can't get to his computer. So it becomes a lot more difficult as you get older. So having someone there that's going to be there to help place trades and know your wishes is something that can really benefit you. So don't expect your spouse to take over funds or share the same enthusiasm for doing stuff themselves as you do, because more than likely they're going to get overwhelmed and make some type of mistake in the long run, or they're going to hire some advisor down the road that you don't like for the reason. So if you want to have some say in that, it's a good thing to start doing it now before it's too late. All right, the third thing that came up a lot this month was Roth conversions. Getting closer to the end of the year, people are talking about, hey, should I move money in from pre-tax to Roth? So when we talk about this, a lot of people don't quite have a whole grand plan for Roth conversion. They hear the idea, sounds good to them, and they have a rough idea of how to do it. It's not rocket science, but they're not quite sure how to do the math behind it or if it makes sense. So in 2 particular cases this month, some people will latch on to some arbitrary number. So I've seen it happen a couple of times where someone just says, I do $10,000 per year of Roth conversions every single year, regardless of what their tax brackets is, what the tax code says, or anything like that. It's just a fixed $10,000 every single year. And there's no rhyme or reason for it. They could easily put more than that away and still be in the same tax bracket. They just kind of they got fixed on this $10,000 number for whatever reason. Now, this person also was contributing into their DCP account about $24,000 per year on a pre-tax basis. So picture this. You put in $24,000 a year pre-tax, and then you're taking $10,000 back out just to convert it into Roth. That just doesn't make sense. It's just a whole lot of paperwork and moving money for no reason. If you want Roth, just contribute Roth to $10,000 to the Roth side. There's no reason for this person to be putting money in pre-tax just to convert in the same year. It's a lot of hassle, but I guess if they feel like they're doing stuff, they're doing the conversions that it made them feel good, therefore their plan was working, and it was just really inefficient, didn't make a whole lot of sense to me at all. But it is things that I've seen people do on more than one occasion. So just because you can do it and you know how to do it doesn't mean you should do it. There might be a simpler way to go about doing it. And another example for this month, a couple was talking about doing a Roth conversion, and we're thinking about maybe next year when income's lower, we could do it. We're roughly talking to them. I didn't look at their tax returns. I said, a conversion could be right. Depending on where you're on the bracket, you might have $20,000 or $30,000 of room. And they literally wrote $30,000 down the paper. They said, okay, great. Next year we're going to do $30,000. And it's like, whoa. I didn't say to do $30,000. I said, it's an example of something that room you might have. You still have to go out and do the math to see if it's going to work out. It can completely change if taxes change next year. If your income's higher than we think it is, if someone gets another job, it can completely derail the plan. So don't just get fixed on some number that you hear in a meeting that's what the recommendation was, because it might not work out or be the most efficient thing for you. So Roth conversions can be a very powerful tool, but only when they're done intentionally and for the right reasons. Now, the fourth thing that I've seen this past month is when we get into the conversation about long-term care, most people don't have a plan at all. They plan on being self-insured, or they bought a plan back when Washington State was coming out with the CARES Act, so they bought just a quick, cheap $100,000 policy just so they could not pay the tax on it. But they didn't really understand what they bought. They have some policy that they know is not nearly enough, but it was better than paying the tax on it. When you're looking at long-term care plans, if you want one that actually, is good or is going to pay out, it's not about the total amount. So we had someone come through and they said, hey, I had $300,000 for long-term care coverage. That's great. Now, is that enough? Maybe, maybe not. But that's not the whole point. You don't want to get caught up on just the total amount, because just because you're insured for $300,000 doesn't mean that you're going to pay $300,000 out for your care. Now, what I mean by that is when you look at your benefits, it all depends on how much they pay out per day or per month. So if your policy says, hey, we're going to pay $100 per day, that's only $3,000 out per month. Now, if you have a $300,000 policy that only pays out $3,000 per month, that's a lot of months you have to be in long-term care for the entire thing to pay out. And if your bill is more than that, which in most cases it's going to be, you're going to be paying anywhere from $6,000, $10,000, depending on the level of care, what state you're in, things like that. That $3,000 is only going to cover a little bit of it. You're on the hook for the rest of it. You can't just ask the long-term care insurance company to cover the full $10,000 per month, because that was not the deal you signed up for. You signed up for $3,000 per month, therefore they give you $3,000 per month. So it's important to look at your policies to see how much they actually pay on a monthly basis, not just what the grand total is, because most of the times these policies, when they finish or when you pass away, there's still money left over that didn't get distributed for long-term care because the monthly amounts were not high enough and the account still had money left. Now, if it's a hybrid or life insurance policy, the remaining balance does pay out to the family, and they're probably going to end up using it to pay for whatever healthcare bills you were left with, or help replenish any funds that you drained because of your shortfall in the long-term care planning world. So when you go for long-term care plans, don't get caught up in total amount of coverage. It's important more so to look at how many months of coverage that they'll pay out, as well as how much of monthly income you're going to be getting. So a policy that's worth $300,000 only pays out $3,000 per month is worth less than a policy that's $200,000 total but pays out $8,000 per month. Obviously, one's going to drain a lot sooner than the other and has less coverage, but it's going to cover you more so when you need it earlier on, and there'll be less of a deficit than you need it. Most times, long-term care on average is 2 to 4 years. So you don't really need a policy that's going to last 8 years. In the case of the $300,000 policy, paying $3,000 out per month. And the second point to this, making sure you have cost of living adjustments on the plan. Most long-term care insurance policies do not have them on there. That's how they're able to keep costs down. So if you see a long-term care insurance policy that looks like a really good deal, you want to see if they're going to inflate the money. If not, while you may be saving money in premiums now, that means that $3,000 a month payment today is going to be the same $3,000 a month you get 20 years down the road. It's not going to increase at all. And just like how you go to work and you like getting raises each year, it's important that your long-term care also goes up in time, because those nurses and people that care for you also get raises over time. And that's the big driving factor of your long-term care, is you're paying for labor. You're paying $35, $40 an hour for someone to come in and take care of you. And they like getting raises too. So as their raises go up, your cost of care is going to go up. And if your long-term care insurance policy does not go up, therefore you're going to be short a lot more than you think you will, and it's not going to cover hardly anything down the road. So the most important feature of a long-term care insurance policy is making sure you have cost of living adjustment to help offset future inflation costs. Now, the fifth mistake that I've seen a handful of times this month are people that separate service and they immediately move their money out of Plan 3. So they said, hey, I'm separated. I don't have to keep money with DRS anymore. Therefore, they move it over into their own IRA, move it into Vanguard, Fidelity, wherever their money is. They said, hey, we're going to sweep it out, and then I'll just invest it there. Now, this could be a good option, but the thing that every one of these people did without realizing it was twofold. And that is, one, when you separate service from Washington State Plan 3, that money that you have in there is actually considered liquid, meaning I can touch it without a 10% penalty as long as I retired after the age of 55. So if you're someone that retired early at 58 and you swept that money into your own IRA, IRAs don't let you take that money out penalty free till 59 and a half. So if you're 58 and all your money's on an IRA, now if you need that money, you got to pay taxes plus a 10% penalty. Or if you should have left it in that Plan 3 account, then you could have got that money out for just the taxes and avoid a 10% penalty. So if you're not 59 and a half yet, you want to think twice or three times about moving money from your Plan 3 account into an IRA, or at least have some money elsewhere to bridge off of, or a part-time job, something. But if their goal is to live off of this portfolio's income, and now it's not an IRA, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot and requiring you to basically pay taxes plus penalties on the funds. Now, is there a way around the 10% penalty? Of course there is, but that's for another video and something that we don't have time to cover in this particular topic. But if you have the right advisor and all the right strategies, then there might be a way to salvage it. Part 2 of this is, as soon as you move money out of Plan 3, is you take yourself out of the option to purchase the TAP annuity. TAP annuity is the way for you to turn a portion of your Plan 3 savings into another guaranteed income stream, so that also grows at 3% guaranteed. So it's just like another pension, but this one's guaranteed to grow. Your Washington State pension, your Social Security, there's no guaranteed growth on those provisions. Yes, they do go up over time depending on inflation, but Washington State caps theirs at 3%, and in some years it can be 0. The TAP annuity is a guaranteed 3% raise for life, and that's something you cannot find out there. I don't know any stock or dividend that's going to guarantee a 3% for life depending on what comes your way, right? And that's 3% growth on top of the income distribution. So if you really do need income, TAP annuity is a good spot to look at. If you don't need income, that's nothing to worry about, but it is something you want to at least think about before making the move. Because once you make that move, there's no undo button, and it's a permanent, you can never get back into the TAP annuity fund. Now, this particular case that we worked on this past month, they were only about 57, 58, and they did this. They took all their money from Plan 3, put it in an IRA. Now they're needing help with income. They have some assets to bridge, but it's not a lot. They're gonna drain down a significant portion of these other assets until they're able to take the money out at 59 and a half without that 10% penalty. And what's worse is they're probably gonna need income in the long run. So the TAP annuity might have been a really good solution for them, but because they took the money out of Plan 3, that's no longer an option. Now we have to figure out how to make income work from the private markets, whether that's through private annuity funds or just from making it work from stock withdrawals. So it's important you consider all of your options before making these moves that do not have an undo button on them. And the sixth point that we talked about a lot this month was back to the long-term care game, the fact that people will claim to be self-insured, or if something happens to me, I'll just take the money out from my home. I'll take a home equity loan out from it. I'll use my retirement funds. My Roth is big enough. I've got $2 million saved up. I'll just use that. That's plenty of money that can cover the care. And you're probably right. You probably could self-insure yourself for $2 million. But the question is, why would you want to? The whole point of insurance is to transfer the risk to another company for a fraction on the dollar. So if long-term care was going to cost you $300,000, yeah, you take $300,000 out of your $2 million portfolio, plus taxes and stuff, you're still left with $1.7 for your spouse. They're probably going to be okay. But you still spent $300,000. If you went and got a long-term care insurance policy, you could potentially cut that cost down by a third or a half. You could put in $100,000, they could easily paid out the other $200,000 for you. So it's a long-term care is a way to leverage your money, so you can only put in a portion of the risk, and the insurance company takes on the rest of the risk. It's the same reason why you have car insurance, why you have home insurance. While you probably could also rebuild your house for $2 million, most people aren't going to cut their home insurance because they know that the insurance company that they're paying premiums to would up the money to rebuild the cost, or at least put up enough money to cover most of the costs to rebuild. It doesn't change when you buy a long-term care insurance policy. You're going to put up a portion of the money if and when you need the care. They'll be putting up the remainder up until whatever their limits are. So it's a way to hedge your risk, protect your assets for the long run. So just because you can be self-insured doesn't necessarily mean you should. The smartest people that I know and the wealthy clients that we help know that leveraging your money is the best way to keep your assets growing. Why spend my dollar? I can spend somebody else's. That's the whole point of insurance in general. And while the costs may seem expensive, if you think the costs are expensive to buy a policy, just wait until what it costs you when you don't have any type of coverage. You're going to be shocked when you're spending 2 to 3 times that amount per month down the road. So remember that hope is not a strategy, especially when long-term care can wipe you out when the average costs are ranging $250 to $300 in just a few short years. One of the points that we talked about today was any type of extreme case. These are all pretty common cases from real life people that I talked to in just the last 30 days. They're all trying to do the right thing. They're doing the research, watching videos, doing the Google, whatever information they have up to them. But without a guide on them sides, they're making expensive mistakes that they might not be able to recover from. So while they may have saved money in fees from hiring an advisor or getting a financial plan done for them, they're finding out the hard way that these little mistakes that they're making without even realizing it are slowly adding up, and it's going to end up costing them way more than it would have had they hired the right person to at least help them out through the transition period and get them set up properly for the rest of their retirement. So if you've been doing all of this all by yourself, your spouse is relying on you to figure it all out, or you rely on your spouse to figure it all out, or your plan is strictly built off of what you hear on YouTube videos, read online, or what you figure out in spreadsheets, then it's time to stop gambling and start building a better future for you. There's a link in the description below to get on the calendar so we can start helping you guys out build a better and smarter financial future. So I hope this helped you guys out. And always remember that your future depends on what you do today.